Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 5 of OSOP Summer Immersion. Believe it or not, we are nearing the end of our experience together, which also means that we are getting much closer to the start of the fall and the academic year for all of you, and I hope that you're really excited about that. This week's module will really address all 3 of those essential questions that we started the summer with. 1, who am I and how does my identity impact my experience in college? 2, what resources exist to support my experience in college? And then 3, how do I build community on campus? We'll have representatives from the different cultural centers at Northeastern coming to speak to us as a panel on Wednesday, where we'll be able to ask them questions, hear about their own experiences as college students, as well as the roles they play now at Northeastern and how their cultural centers help current students develop a sense of identity and belonging, how their programs bring people together and allow students to surround themselves with other people who may look like them, have shared similar life experiences, values, perspectives, and so on. Let's take a look at this week's module. So I'll share my screen. There are 2 discussion boards this week. The first is due on Tuesday night to get us ready for Wednesday's session. And then the second discussion board will be due on Thursday with some follow-up due by Saturday. And then finally, we need to continue to work on our college success plan. I'll talk about each of these in more detail. The first assignment is to learn more about Northeastern's cultural centers. What you'll find on this page is a list of the different cultural centers that will have representatives attending on Wednesday. And each of these is linked, and what I urge you to do is to spend some time learning about each of these centers. Even if you don't immediately identify with this center and don't think that you'll be using their resources and attending their programs right off the bat, I do want you to think about the fact that you will be surrounded by other students who will be using those spaces. So maybe a friend or a classmate of yours will be using these spaces. And it's important for us to know that the spaces exist and the types of programming they offer. In addition, a lot of the centers offer educational and other celebratory events that are open to the broader population at Northeastern, and those may be things that you do want to attend, whether it's because you have an interest in learning more, whether you want to support classmates, colleagues, and so on. So take some time to learn more about these spaces. And then finally, you may find that the person who's speaking has shared something that really resonates with you. So even if you don't necessarily identify with their center, you may identify with that person, and that's somebody that you want to get to know as well. The assignment due on Tuesday then involves adding some questions that you want to ask the panelists. Think about whether or not your question is general, ready to be addressed by anyone, or if you want to ask that question of a specific person. And then also, if you know ahead of time which cultural centers you want to meet with, let us know in your post as well. We'll have 2 separate breakout sessions on Wednesday where you can spend a little bit more time in small group settings getting to know the folks who are presenting as well as their centers. And then this gives you a little bit of more information about what Wednesday itself will look like. Next, we'll be talking a little bit more about identity and thinking a little bit bigger about systems of oppression that exist. This is a great video. I'm not sure if you've seen it before. It's one of my favorites. It's only about 3.5 minutes long, and I suggest that you watch it at least 2 or 3 times to get the full meaning out of it. And this speaker, Eliana Pipes, talks about the 4 I's of oppression. So oppression existing on 4 different levels: ideological, institutional, interpersonal, and then internalized. And the video will go on to explain what each of those levels entails, as well as providing some really terrific examples of what oppression looks like at each of those levels. Once you've had a chance to watch the video and think a little bit about what it's telling us, there are some discussion posts for you to engage in. So first, there are some questions for you to address in your post. One is choose one of the social identities from the social identity wheel that you created in week 1. Thinking about in what ways have you benefited from holding that identity, if it's a dominant identity within our society, or in what ways have you experienced oppression as a result of holding that identity? Maybe you've been marginalized because of that. You don't have to refer to all 4 levels of I's of oppression, but certainly refer to the relevant ones and provide concrete examples if you're able to. Finally, your post should also address what actions you have taken or plan to take in order to dismantle systems of oppression. Thinking about the fact that effectively dismantling oppression has to happen on all four levels. We may not always be able to accomplish that. So which ones will you be able to accomplish? And think about ways in which we can dismantle oppression. We can think about educating ourselves and others. We can think about protesting, voting, challenging isms as they arise when we witness them, whether it's in class, out in public, in our own homes, and so on. The follow-up assignment to this is to respond to at least 2 classmates' posts. I have suggested a few different prompts. You don't have to respond to all of them. You could also choose your own prompt, but this is a way for you to engage in some conversation and get to know one another a little bit better. And then finally, we want to continue working on our college success plan. Now, this module is, or this particular page is going to be empty for a few more days. What I'm going to suggest is that whatever app you're using to create your slides, you eventually download them as PowerPoint slides. All students at Northeastern have access to Microsoft Office and PowerPoint. So I'll teach you how to download PowerPoint and then use PowerPoint to record your presentation, which will lead to the final product that is due in week 6. More information to come on that. What I do want to say about the College Success Plan is that we will be working in partners to offer feedback this week. And then one question that's come up a lot about College Success Plans as people have watched last year's is that a lot of students mentioned Mr. Jackson saying something along the lines of no clubs for your first year. And that's a very extreme measure. And there is one video in which he finally speaks up and says, that's not actually what I'm trying to say. What we're trying to say with the clubs and activities is that we don't want students to overextend themselves in the first year. As you've probably discovered, being at a large place like Northeastern, there are many resources at your disposal. There are close to 600 clubs on campus. It would be very easy to look at all of these clubs and activities, get really excited, and spend all of your time attending clubs and activities, assuming leadership positions, and then losing track of the amount of time you actually have left for your academics, for classwork, for a paid job, if that's something you're pursuing, and so on. What we encourage students to do in the first year is to pick 1 or 2 activities that they find particularly compelling. And so at first you might attend 4 or 5 different groups just to get a sense of what they are. Do you connect with the people and the mission and the activities? And then to winnow it down to 1 or 2 things that you can focus on much more closely for that first year. That will help you strike a sense of balance. Clubs and activities are really important for you to get a chance to meet other people, to identify and pursue your passions. But at the end of the day, your first priority is to be a student, and we don't want you to lose sight of that as well. Looking forward to this week. There's a lot of exciting stuff. You're going to meet some really wonderful people, colleagues that I hold really dear and work very closely with to ensure that we have a campus that prioritizes diversity, that really thinks about all different kinds of ways of being inclusive. I hope that you'll come on Wednesday with lots of questions and that you're equally excited to meet these folks as well. As always, send questions my way, and I will look forward to seeing your work.